Hey, I'm really excited. This is kind of been like a passion project of mine, and just sitting around chatting with great people that have come into my world. Today, I've got Mr. Harrison Wilson, who's a neighbor and a friend, and also co-founder of Limitless Minds. Yeah. He had another platform called Club Limitless, but y'all have evolved back into that. Co-founder and CEO. And just an awesome guy, and I appreciate you coming on here. This is the first episode where we actually have a name. We actually went through about 15 episodes calling it the No Name Podcast. So we're going to call this In Good Company, because I think,
love it.
And the irony of it is, one of my team members texted me this morning, and she said, it matters who you surround yourself with. They can either magnify your strengths or amplify your weaknesses. Yeah,
so that's right.
I mean, that's right in this chord with just being in a relationship and talking about peace, profit, and purpose, and kind of what gets you going. So without further ado, Mr. Harry Wilson, welcome to the show. And thanks, tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, appreciate it. I love this kind of platform and the ability to kind of, hear and listen and learn from the people that you respect, and that you, and like you said, surrounding yourself with people that inspire your work and your everyday. So I appreciate it. So Harry Wilson, co-founder and CEO of Limitless Minds. We're a mental fitness platform. I live here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Right.
I got 3 daughters. They're 12, 9, and 7. Live out in Anchorage, near Jimmy. Yep. And, but moved here about 10 years ago. Spent most of my career in sales leadership, particularly in life science, biotech, medical device.
Okay.
And then got inspired to really leave my own legacy, and surround myself with a team that could help, that could help me kind of bring that dream to the forefront. Building teams, in sales and sales leadership. I was surrounded by corporate athletes, right? People that are kind of constantly facing pressure, always being measured by behavioral metrics at work, performance at work, chasing a number. It's like the NFL, or it's like professional sports. If you perform, you get paid well. If you don't, they will help you find excellence elsewhere.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And all that pressure, I became really obsessed with how to build a team, right? And how to, identify and develop human capital.
Yep.
And was really noticing, all the resources that the companies that I served previously, they were providing. And I was lucky to work with some badass organizations, right? That provided significant resources to develop, their individuals. But I noticed some gaps in what they weren't providing. And it was all around that mental fitness component, that peak performance component, the ability to help one develop adversity tolerance, psychological flexibility, because, it's easy when things are working, but when things aren't working optimally, like, how do you survive that?
Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah, punched in the face. Yeah, exactly. And so, we have, you hire somebody, they come in, and you've probably seen it. They come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, thinking they're going to take over the world. And then reality sets in, right? Those first 30, 60, 90 days. And then, okay, so how do you get through that journey? And then as time goes on, you start to hit bottlenecks and hit kind of the glass ceiling.
Yep.
How do you go through that and kind of reach your potential, or even better yet, not reach your potential, but actualize your potential, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so became really obsessed with that, and started this company with a couple of, a few fantastic individuals. One being somebody I worked with in pharma for a decade, a guy named DJ Eitzen, who lives up in Cleveland. And then my brother, Russell Wilson, who, for those that can tell, my face,
there are some similarities there.
Yeah, I'm the older brother. And then his mindset coach named Trevor Moawad, who's kind of like the modern day godfather of the mental conditioning space for.
I want to make sure we hit on that, because you've put me in rabbit holes with things that he's put together. And I also want to give a shout out. How do you feel about your ego being stroked? Because I don't think I've ever told you what I'm about to tell you right now.
Oh boy, I don't. I'm trying to. I don't love it, but if you want to feed that to me today, I'll take it.
I'm going to feed you a little bit, and I think it's probably a little over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. We sat on my back porch and had coffee, and you brought to my world a convergence of my past life and what's my future life going to be in terms of sports and mindset and things I knew as an athlete that I had to, how to deal with adversity on the field and, measuring performance with numbers and things like that. And then, all of a sudden we're having this conversation. You're talking about being corporate athletes and bringing those two things together for me has been, for me personally, and hopefully our team feels it too, it's changed the trajectory of how I think about our business. And I've adopted a model: mindset and activity equals outcomes, right?
Love it, yeah.
And if you can have all the activities right, but if your mindset's not right, you're not going to get the outcome. If you have all the right mindset, but you're not doing the activities, you're not going to get the outcome.
Yeah.
So you've put me on a journey about 18 months to 2 years ago about how to really grow myself as a person and as a leader. And I appreciate that. I don't think I've ever told you that.
Nah, man, that's good to hear. And I think that's the goal. You know what I mean? I think the goal is to democratize, access to world-class mindset coaching that are typically reserved for, the best of the best elite athletes in the world, right? From Olympians to, athletes in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, et cetera. And we just knew we had this unique access to that level of coaching and strategic advisory in the mental fitness space. And we thought we had a unique ability to share that in a scalable way. And it hasn't been easy. Right. The journey continues. And there's things that have happened in building our business that we weren't expecting, which is not a surprise to those that have built something from scratch. COVID. We had a founder pass away. So there's been bumps in the roads, and I'm sure there'll be bumps in the roads, but I think we're built for it. I think we're made for this. And
I've heard those words before.
Yeah. And so we'll keep trucking. I think that's what entrepreneurship is about. And certainly just kind of, as you look to, just the ability to pivot and stay nimble is critical. And so we take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity in today's business world to pivot, but I want to go backwards a little bit. You said two words that really struck a chord: access and legacy. Those two things I think maybe go hand in hand in terms of people that have access, and does it come from their legacy? You mentioned your brother, who's a world-class athlete. But I think your legacy it goes back further than that. I think the story of your father and your grandfather is really cool that maybe not a lot of people know about, just because of where we are in space and time, right? Russell and his success, but it really started before that. Yeah, man.
I mean, it's we're lucky enough to kind of have, you mentioned access to kind of some of the facts and some of the history in our family, that does go way back, if you will. But, we had we were lucky to have kind of a family that's built around, higher education, so my grandfather, I'm the fourth, by the way. So this is Junior,
all right.
Harrison Benjamin Wilson, Jr., actually grew up here he was born in Amsterdam, but he went to Kentucky State. He played basketball and baseball at Kentucky State. He wanted to go to University of Kentucky at that time. Years ago, wasn't an option for him. So he went to KSU. But he ended up matriculating out of KSU, got his PhD from Indiana University while he was the head basketball coach at Jackson State University in HBCU,
right,
down in Mississippi. He's currently the winningest coach in HBCU history, basketball coach. And so he spent a number of years there while commuting back and forth from Jackson to Bloomington to get his degree, his PhD. So he had his PhD. He had these 4 sons. His wife, my dad's biological mother, would pass away in the mid 60s. And so my grandfather was like, I got to get these boys the hell out of Jackson. Right. And so he sends them all up to Wilbraham and Munson, which is a boarding school up in Springfield, Massachusetts. And all 4 boys go up there. Luckily, the oldest, my Uncle Ben, was very bright and kind of paved the way. He would end up going to Dartmouth. My dad would go to Wilbraham, then Dartmouth, and then the other 2 boys would go to Dartmouth as well. So they all went Ivy League school.
Right.
My Uncle Ben would end up at Harvard Law School. My dad would go to UVA Law School. My dad was all Ivy football player, also played baseball there. So, he certainly had a lot of success from an education perspective, had some success as an athlete. After he graduated at UVA Law, he decided to try out for the San Diego Chargers. All right. So he was there when Kellen Winslow was there, Dan Fouts, some legends, right? And
Kellen Winslow Sr.,
Winslow Sr. Right. Yeah, Kellen Winslow Sr. And anyway, so when he was done playing, it got cut. He had a job waiting for him in Cincinnati, Ohio at Procter & Gamble as an attorney. And we were there. I was born there. My brother was born there. We moved from there back to Virginia. In the late 80s, early 90s, and grew up there. And my dad continued to have a lot of success and was an attorney, but he got sick. He had diabetes, my father did, and so he had all the complications from diabetes that you can, if you went to WebMD and just searched what the complications from as diabetic, he had them all, right? And so he ended up getting his leg amputated below the knee after he had suffered from neuropathy and a wound in his foot that didn't heal, and so they cut off his leg below the knee. And that kind of began it was kind of the beginning of the end for him. So he had a number of strokes. He was on dialysis, 3 days a week, whatever it might have been. And he passed away at 55, right shortly after my wedding in 2010. But, I tell this story a lot, and I think you've probably heard this because I've talked a lot about potential, right? And, I'll speak in front of audiences and I'll ask everybody, hey, who wants to reach their potential? And everybody raises their hand, right? Because who doesn't want to reach their potential,
exactly.
Right? And it's kind of a trick question from my perspective, because I think that potential is a funny, slippery, thing, right? Because what happens once I reach my potential, right? What's next? And so what I'd like people to kind of reframe their mind to is, instead of reaching your potential, how do I skill up? Both
how
mentally,
do you exceed your potential?
Yeah. But how do I develop skills that my potential rises? How do I develop skills across every area of my life, from mental, physical, technical, from the standpoint of what the daily work I do, whatever it might be? How do I elevate my potential in all these areas, and then focus on closing the gap between that potential and what I can actualize, right? Because I'd rather my potential continue to rise, right? And then closing the gap between that potential and what I can actualize every time, right? So that way I never really truly reach my potential. My potential just continues to rise. Right?
Is it Zig Ziglar, the law of the lid?
Yeah,
Is that right? Yeah.
I think so.
If you put a flea in a jar with a lid, it'll only jump this high.
Yeah.
But if you put him in a bigger jar with a bigger lid,
I don't know if it's Zig Ziglar or not, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that's so true. If you can't, if again, back to mindset and activity, if your mindset is I can only get to X, you're going to get to X.
That's right.
But if your mindset is X times 10, then you start narrowing the number of activities that you can do to get there. Yeah. And I think Dan Sullivan says 10X is easier than 2X. So I love that.
Yeah, man.
All right. So access, trajectory. And I'm going to go I'm going to be vulnerable for a second as a 6 foot tall white guy in Louisville, Kentucky named James Smith. But I was also a former teacher, and I know there are definitely limitations to access for different people and different demographics and different socioeconomic things. Yeah. How do you had a tremendous amount of access. Yeah. How do you speak to people that don't have the access that you had, and yet and I know that there is unlimited access? It just the path might be different. Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, based on the story I just told about my father and grandfather and some of our family, like we certainly had access, and that access was kind of like forced upon us, right? I mean, in other words, it really wasn't an option. I think the access that my father gave me and my siblings more than anything was like access to imagination and access to dreaming and access to believing that we were capable. Yep. And I think that, for those that don't necessarily have resources, for our children, that's the best thing we can do, in lieu of resources is mindset, is the resource of, belief. Right. And so, I try to put my children in environments, regularly that may be uncomfortable. Right. Or that may be, for them being young, they might think that I don't belong here, or that I don't really fit into this, or how I can't do that. And just so that as, you stack those moments of putting them in environments where they can, they believe that they belong, that they fit, that they can, that they're capable, the more that they start to, the more they start to kind of live into that reality.
Led Paso. Start believing.
Yeah. And so I think those are things that our parents did well, right? Is kind of force, uncomfortable environments on us, right? And not necessarily call that a privilege, but to make us think that that the privilege was not, we weren't privileged to be there. The privilege is that we were in the room for others, right? And so that kind of builds a certain level of confidence and belonging that, I think most kids are kind of looking for. Right. And so I think that, for those that don't have resources, the access can still be there because it's a mindset that we can build around our capability, that potential that I mentioned, and the ability to kind of actualize in those moments. Right. And so,
and kind of, again, we're kind of looking at previous history. My mother, and I didn't know it at the time, but she was setting me up on a trajectory that was unbelievable. She said, you can be anything you want, and I always pushed against that. I'm like, well, I want to be a spider and I want to crawl on the ceiling. I can't do that. But what she was teaching me is if you have the right mindset. Now, I think the opportunity that I wish my mother had was she didn't necessarily know how to get me the resources or get me the access, but she just kept pushing.
Yeah.
I wish she was alive today to see what we're doing, she really set that.
When did she pass away?
December, actually Christmas Eve, 2019.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So she might have had the first case of COVID. Like
really?
She had COPD and some issues, but it's taken me this long to realize that she wasn't crazy. Like she was actually pushing me in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so, all right. Shifting gears a little bit, Trevor Moab. I think maybe, and I'm guessing, and you could tell me, he maybe is instrumental in this kind of the evolution of this business and this mindset thing.
Yeah, I mean, he was in large part the reason why we started the company. I mean, certainly the success my brother had from 2012 to currently was kind of a thesis for what we thought we could bring to the corporate athlete, to companies. We're a B2B enterprise SaaS product. So like we go and sell our platform to companies, right?
Right.
But Trevor, I mentioned he was kind of the modern day godfather of the mental conditioning space for athletes. So Trevor grew up in Pacific Northwest. His father was a guy named Bob Moab, who, if anybody's familiar with Chicken Soup for the Soul. Yep. Bob was one of the original contributors for Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Okay.
So, and kind of one of the pioneers of like the self-esteem space back in like the 70s. So Trevor grew up in this environment, right? So his kitchen table, his dining room table, conversations were probably a lot different than most of ours, right? But he went on to play basketball and soccer at Occidental College, out near Pasadena, I think. Yep. And then he would end up, teaching for a little bit, but he ended up at IMG Academy, building that mental conditioning programming at IMG Academy. For those that don't know, IMG is down in kind of that Bradenton, Sarasota area.
Right.
He called it the Hogwarts for athletes. Right?
Did he? That's funny.
Because it's some of the best and brightest young athletes in the world.
And they serve every athlete. Like there's so many
every athlete in kind of the major sports, particularly. And I say kind of one of the best, for the best athletes, young athletes in the world. I mean, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think somewhere around 30 to 33% of their student athletes
go on to play professional.
They're international.
Okay.
So they have people coming in globally into this school, and it started off as Balotelli's Tennis Institute. So it was known initially for some of the best players in the world back in the 80s, 90s, et cetera. They played tennis there, but now it's a full out school. It's got every sport. They have multiple varsity teams and then kind of national teams and so on and so forth. But anyway, they spend a lot of time and investment in mental conditioning.
Exactly.
And so he built that program down there, and has a coaching tree of his own, right? So there's a number of mental fitness coaches and peak performance coaches that have come kind of under that umbrella that now are working with some of the best and brightest organizations in professional sports and amateur sports as well. And so he built that there, built a name for himself, ended up working with Nick Saban in Alabama football.
That's what was he, did he predate the success at Alabama?
It kind of came in right in parallel with it. Yeah. And he wasn't the only one that was on staff there to kind of work on the mental conditioning part of Alabama's culture. But that's him and Nick had this kind of plan to say, hey, listen, we're going to build a culture around mindset. And that way, as the program, because in college sports, you're going to have athletes that come and go every 4 years, right? And you're going to cycle through, every year is a different team, essentially. And so he wanted the culture to never change. He wanted that to be a standard, right? Regardless of who comes in and out of the door, right? And so mental conditioning was kind of a big component to it, building a language that could create the right behaviors, and the behaviors that generate the results. And so he was known for that work. He ended up going on working with Kirby Smart at Georgia before he would pass away in 2021.
Not Kirby Smart. Yeah. Kirby Smart's still alive.
Well, Kirby Smart's alive. Yeah. But Trevor Moab passed away in 2021.
I'm sitting here laughing because the interjection of life, flipping through Tick Graham Facebook, whatever it was. But Nick Saban, Nick Saban's talking. I think it's more of a recent game day when he was at Michigan State, and he said, I was a transactional coach, and I was focused on the wins, and if we didn't win, I was angry, and if I was angry, I was taking it out on people, and then I would just replace that person with somebody else to get. And he realized that he couldn't win that way.
Yeah.
And he started working as a transformational coach. He's like, I'm going to build a culture and a mindset around my program that allows for success whether we win or not.
Yeah.
And so it's almost serendipitous that I literally watched that on the way in here today.
That's right.
And I was like, man, that played in perfectly.
You're right. And I think, one thing that Trevor talks about quite a bit is, they realized that, obviously at Alabama, they have the ability to recruit the best talent, in the United States. Right. And so these guys, oftentimes these guys come in and they're gonna win because they're bigger, faster, stronger, et cetera.
Yep.
Right. But what does that look like as they move forward? Right. For these guys that want to play in the NFL, kind of almost expect to play in the NFL. We all know they're not going to, and some are going to have short careers if they do, or whatever it might be. But when typically people are, kind of pumping like positive thinking into the hearts and minds of young athletes, right? Yep. And that's great. Positive's awesome, right? But I think they realized after doing a lot of research and studying is that, hey, man, there's not that much data that supports that positive thinking really works, right? Yeah. But that's what all the self-help books tell you to do. If you go to the airport and you're looking at books in that area, like you're going to see all these things about positive thinking. But ironically or coincidentally, there was a ton of data to support that negative thinking works. Problem is that it works negatively 100% of the time. Yeah. And so what Nick, Trev, and some of those guys decided to do was like, instead of pumping positive thinking into these athletes, let's help them understand the power of negativity so that they can, so that way even the most cynical or skeptical athlete can buy in with that data to the fact that, what I really need to do instead of just being blindly positive is I need to be really cognizant of how powerful negativity is and try to eliminate or mitigate against that, right? So they studied that, created a lot of content and curriculum and approach towards minimizing negativity.
Do you have the data on that? Like, could you cite it right now?
Well, I mean, some of it. So I mean, like, here's the thing: is how many thoughts do you think you have a day?
10,000.
Yeah. So the data actually says that you'll have somewhere between 60 and 80,000 thoughts per day.
Right.
Right. Which is a lot of freaking thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Now,
how many minutes are in today?
What's really scary is that 80% of those thoughts are negative, right? And why do you think that is?
I think it's human nature. It's DNA. We have this survival, fight or flight. Like everything, and I've probably heard this from you or somebody else, but you go back to, cavemen. Like they walk out of their cave in the morning, and it's not like look at the flowers. Is there a saber-toothed tiger ready to?
That's right. That's right. No, it's exactly right. So I mean, we're built to respond to negativity, right? We have a negativity bias, and from back in the day, it's a survival technique. Now, in more kind of modern day, it's perpetuated by our environment that we have with things like this, right? And
a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, and so we have from social media, right, to our news platforms, politics, social injustice, like all of this stuff that's happening, right, is pumping negativity. So I don't care what form of media you go to, whether it's CNN or Fox News, or whether it's ESPN or NFL Network or whatever your media of choice is, like it's all led by negativity, right? So if you go on ESPN.com right now, and anybody watching, I dare you to go to ESPN.com right now and go to that little ticker. You're gonna if there's 10 things listed there, eight of them are going to be negative, right? Because that's what people respond to, right?
And you even watch it, and it's the negative and the positive. Lamar Jackson just had a great game, and they talked about he fumbled in overtime.
I mean, they're always going to find the negative because that's what people respond to. And then when you think about from a sports perspective, when you think about the shows that have all the numbers right now, it's all those debate kind of shows, and from First Take to any of those kind of talking head shows. I mean, they make money on having arguments with each other, right? And so just by nature, you have to have somebody that's taking one stance versus another, and that negativity from just kind of arguing over,
to chip away at their
like
thing.
who's the is it LeBron or Michael Jordan, right? Is it Kobe or is this person an elite quarterback or are they not, right? Whatever it might be. Is this person done? They need to bench this person. Hey, this head coach make terrible decision. He needs to be fired. Like it's just constant negativity, right? And so I think that what Trevor Moawad built, and he's written 2 books. Before he passed away in 2021, he wrote 2 books. One was called "It Takes What It Takes." Okay. The other's called "Getting to Neutral."
Getting to neutral.
And in these books, he talks about a number of tools and like kind of the history of some of the best performers in the world that he worked with. But one of the kind of common threads in that book is this concept called neutral thinking, right? Which obviously we're familiar with positive, we're familiar with negative, which we just talked about.
Yeah, you have 60,000 thoughts. 48,000 of them are negative.
Yeah,
and you're left with
right.
Like 22.
And so it's really because of all that negativity. It's really hard to just jump from negative all the way to positive, right? Especially because that's what you hear about toxic positivity, right? Being blindly positive. It's a really hard jump to make, right? But this area called neutral is about diagnosing the problem or the situation, right, without judgment, right? XYZ happened. Right, without judgment, and then be able to develop a set of solutions or a solution to move forward. Right, that's all based on behaviors. Right, so you mentioned Nick, early in his career, kind of all focused on results.
Yep.
But how he shifted his mindset as a head coach and a leader and brought that to Alabama is worrying less about the results and the behaviors that are going to generate the results. Right, so it's really focused on what behaviors are optimal that we can lean into day by day, regardless of the results, regardless of the scoreboard, regardless of the numbers, regardless of, how bad the quarter went, regardless of what's going on, what's going on at home or whatever it might be. Right. And so it's really about this area of neutral, which is about truth, about facts, about behavior, right? About having optimal language, right? If the language isn't working for me, how I talk to myself isn't working for me, then I just shouldn't say it out loud. Right. And so that's a really tough discipline. But it's really all about non-negativity, right? How do I minimize or eliminate the negativity from my daily work, from my daily, efforts, So
my mom also taught me you have two choices. The only two choices you really have in this world are how you act and how you react. And I've come to find out that some Stoic teaching, some Marcus Aurelius stuff, but that goes to neutral thinking. Like something happens, car blows up out here right now. Like, we have a choice. Like, what action are we going to take, and how are we going to react to it?
Well, I mean, I think that some people, when we talk about neutral thinking or non-negativity, they kind of tighten up initially because they're like, well, I'm not a monk. Like, I can't control my thoughts. And you're right. You can't control. You can't control your thoughts, right? So really, it's not necessarily the first thought you have; it's the second thought. Yeah. So if I feel like if I'm racing over here for a meeting and I know I'm 5 minutes late, I left probably too late, traffic's terrible. Instead of how you typically will talk shit to yourself in those moments, like how did I'm going to be late.
Not again.
Right. Not again. You're so stupid. Like why didn't I leave early or whatever that is? You might have that thought, but then the ability to reframe that and say, well, listen, what can I do? Like, let me call Jimmy, let him know, hey, listen, I'm 5 minutes late, apologize. Hey, can I grab you a coffee on the way in? Right. Whatever it might be, right? Just to say like, well, listen, what's the outcome of this is not end of the world, right? Yep. And also moving forward, if I have a meeting on this side of town at 9 a.m., I'm going to leave 10 minutes earlier because I know traffic's going to be tough, right? And so moving forward, I don't have that issue, right? So it's just about being able to reframe, because being able to control your thoughts is tough, right? But being able to control the second thought is much easier, and even more so, controlling what you say out loud, you truly have control over.
What is the impact of verbalizing a negative thought versus not verbalizing? So that's
some of the data as well. So what we found is that negativity is actually 10 times more powerful than its friend positivity, right? In other words, it's going to impact you 10x.
Are they truly friends?
And they're friends, they're friends.
They're colleagues.
Maybe they're foes, right? But negativity is 10 times more powerful. And this is what the data says from, Stanford, Harvard Business Review, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's also interesting, that same data, they found that when verbalized, negativity can have it can be a multiple of 4 to 7x, right? Okay. So by saying something negative out loud, right, it can be a multiple of 40 to 70 times more powerful, more impactful on you than saying something positive out loud. Right. That's how powerful negativity is. And
so if I woke up I was running late and I thought to myself, I can't believe this light's out today, and I verbalized, this is stupid. What's LMP? Why doesn't Louisville have this fixed? Like all of a sudden that has more of a physiological response.
It's going to cost you, right? Yeah. Now, it may be marginal, right? But if I know it costs me, why would I? Right. Yep. Why would I do it? Right. Yep.
And so there goes back to the choice.
Right. And so it's kind of like, so how I liken it to this is how I receive this. It's a lot like my diet, what I eat. Right. Okay. And I say this because I struggled with this for a number of years, and still struggle here and there. But in 2021, I stepped on a scale, and I could have been an offensive lineman, Probably should have been at that point. Was just, I hadn't been measuring, I hadn't been getting on scales. You're getting heavy, you're kind of indulging,
right.
You're doing maybe not working out, whatever it is, but you didn't realize how heavy I was. Get on the scale, rock my world, set out a plan, and kind of change the way that I was consuming, right? And ultimately what I felt like my strategy was, I just need to be a calorie deficit, right? And do that consistently. And so, I just set out a plan to be at a calorie deficit daily, right? And I'm losing 50 pounds, right? 55 pounds. Now, what's interesting is it's very similar with our language, right? We have to be at a negativity deficit in what we consume, right?
Okay.
So if you spend, 4 hours in total across a day on TikTok and Instagram, right? Just know that's not working for you, right? And so if I can just minimize that, I don't have to eliminate it completely from my diet, right? But if I can, in moderation, enjoy social media. Maybe it's 30 minutes. Maybe I set aside a time of evening or day or morning where maybe I spend 30 minutes on that instead of 4 hours across the day. You mentioned you put your phone in a safe in Mexico, so you could just put that away, right? If we can find time to fast, if you will, intermittent fast
from your phone,
right? Then all of a sudden our negativity consumption is going to go down, just like when we fast, intermittent fast with our with what we eat.
Caloric consumption.
Our caloric consumption typically will go down, right? And I can still have my eating windows. And the same thing with our phone or social media. Like if I can find a certain time where I allow myself to do it, I don't feel deprived. But my negativity consumption, that's what we're getting a lot of negativity from, is going to go down naturally, right? So I got to treat my language like my diet. Be really careful what I consume, because garbage in, garbage out. Right? And so that's something that we really want to work on, is like, how do I find, specific strategies to reduce the negativity that I'm consuming? And that's going to make us a more optimal performer, right? Whether it be in business, whether it be at home, whether it be, physically, if there's, if I play a sport, if I'm running marathons, or I'm training for something, whatever it might be, that's going to help me, be a better performer. So it's not always, because a lot of people ask me, hey, what will an athlete like Russell do? What does he do to be at his best? And there's things to answer around that. But really most of the response around that is actually what an athlete like Russ, or some of these Olympians you saw in Paris this summer are doing. It's actually what they're not doing. It's what they're willing not to do. That's a lot of, kind of like a Nick Saban talks about. It's like, the best athletes in the world, what the things they're willing not to do, that other people fall into those traps. That's what makes them elite. Right? And so
I know you brought this to me too, like looking at professional golfers. The difference between the number one in the world and the number 1,000 in the world is like half a stroke or whatever it is. And it's not what they're doing differently. It's like you said, it's not what they're not doing. They're probably not getting enough sleep, not training enough, or drinking more. They're just when you get to a certain point, it's the differentiator isn't the talent. It's what you feed your brain, what you feed your body.
That's right. I mean, oftentimes it's that cliche of a game of inches or whatever, right? I mean, oftentimes what
is that? Any given Sunday?
Yeah, exactly.
1 inch at a time.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's oftentimes the margins are not in talent. It's in how you're responding to adversity, right? The things that you're consuming, but especially today, especially in 2024, right? In recent years, with everything, imagine if you're a professional golfer, quarterback, point guard, and then NBA, whatever it might be, and every time you turned on the TV or went to your social media, they're talking about you.
Right.
So imagine, Jimmy, in your business, if every day you went to your typical channels of media, and
they'd have a lot to say.
You couldn't avoid them talking shit about you, right? But you continue just to watch it and consume it,
right?
You're gonna wither with your soul is gonna just wither up, right? And then your confidence is gonna be like a raisin, right? And it's impossible to perform behind that. So I mean, those are things that I would recommend any athlete, amateur, professional, college, whatever it might be. It's poison. It's rat poison, right? And if you consume it, just know that it's like gravity. You don't have to believe it, but you don't have to believe that gravity exists, but It does.
It does. Yeah.
Right?
And you might be able to defy it for a little bit by jumping.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen? You're going to land right back on the ground.
For me, I might be able to jump a little higher.
Right.
You know, so I'll defy gravity longer than maybe somebody like yourself.
But exactly, it's a law. But you know, so you say that, and you know, from my profession, I can tell you, I see it clear as day, and maybe I can't articulate it as well as you can. The market right now, interest rates, instability in politics, and I listen to so many professionals in the real estate space right now that they listen. That's all they listen to.
Yeah.
And so the moment the rates dropped a little bit, they're like, rates are dropping. But you know, the entire time they've withered away into this idea that they can't change their circumstance because of the market. Yeah. And that's not true.
Well, I mean, and here's the fine line, right? It's like, you want to stay educated, right? Like, you want to be on your P's and Q's. You want to kind of understand like what's coming and be educated 100%. So in order to be educated, you have to have some source of like,
knowledge,
some source of knowledge, resources, but you got to be really careful about who you're following, who you're reading. Find 1 to 2, just a couple or a few resources that you can really, really trust. Right. And stay consistent with those. Yeah. Because as soon as you start taking, things from so many different inputs, right, it all gets very jumbled. Yeah. And typically, some of the negativity kind of monsters start to creep in, right? Yep. And it gets a little, the less you can control, and obviously all we want to control we can't control. So the more uncontrollables you're intaking, then you're in this world of just kind of like, you're just kind of swirling around.
And how many times do you have to hear something negative and say negative? How many times do you have to hear the reality around you? You only need to hear it once. Yeah. Hey, listen, we're going to be down 1.2 million sold homes across the nation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But guess what? We're still going to sell 4.8. Yeah. There's still plenty of market share out there. Yeah. Same thing, I don't think Lamar Jackson wakes up every morning watching how many times he fumbled. He's probably more excited about the fact that he won the game.
And here's the thing. I mean, this thing about sports too, right? You mentioned the Lamar thing. If he fumbles and they lose, it's a massive problem. You fumble and you win. Right. It's not an issue. Yep. Right. I mean, so like, it's so funny, I think, this thing, because we talk about behavior precedes results, and they do. In that world, the winning is a elixir, right? You know what I mean? A play, typically in a game like in NFL, there's 2 or 3 what we call gap plays, game altering plays, right? Right. And it just shifts the narrative from a media perspective, right? If Joe Burrow wins the game, right? You know what I mean? And he's threw for however many yards he threw for, however many touchdowns. It's, Cincinnati's back. Yep. Playoff team. Yeah. Now, literally we listen to the NFL Network and the Bengals are done. Right. The Bengals are done.
That's what kills me about the NFL, because 2 weeks ago, before the Bills game, the Ravens, this might be the end of their season. Yeah. They were a field goal and a toenail away from being the talk of the town. Yeah. And we're talking about worried about this.
Yeah. It's but what would be the fun of being like logical and pragmatic, right? And it wouldn't sell. It wouldn't sell advertisements, and it wouldn't sell. It wouldn't get numbers, right? And so it's a business, you know.
And we and then talking about being corporate athletes, we take that same lens and put it on, your sales or your KPIs or your leading indicators. You're like whatever you're analyzing for your business. Yeah. You've got a choice. You can, go Chicken Little and say the sky's falling, or you can say, all right, well, here's what we didn't do. Right. Here's what we need to do. Let's double down on this.
Right. And nobody's coming to save you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Whether you're an athlete or a corporate athlete, what you really realize when you're in kind of high performance environments is that nobody's going to come and rescue you from poor numbers, a poor quarter, a tough market. Let's say you're a field sales rep in pharmaceutical, like a tough territory that is just kind of, it's always been tough in this city. It is, but nobody's going to come save you, right? And you signed up for this. Nobody dragged you into this role, right? And so at some point you realize that if I'm going to kind of make it through certain adversity, like I'm gonna have to actually do different things. Right. I have to have different behaviors, right? And I'm gonna have to do the work. You know what I mean? And I've said this a lot. Like, don't be upset with the results you don't get from the work you don't do. Right. And I think a lot of us are kind of like waiting for somebody to come rescue us, and not that we don't really want to do the work, and we're hoping maybe just the winds change, right?
Yep.
And then we're upset when they don't,
Right.
And we're still stuck where we were, or even worse, like regressing.
Or even if the winds change and you're staying in the same spot.
Yeah. I mean, because then now you don't even have the opportunity to ride the wave of some luck, right?
Yeah.
When you do have some luck and the market's shifting, you're like, oh, I didn't even this is awesome.
Yeah.
You haven't even gotten a chance to really optimize that.
Yeah.
You know?
The luckier I get, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who said that?
No, you.
Yeah, I ripped that quote from somebody else. I think, it's something to the line of, what's funny about luck is the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah. I love it. And that's absolutely right.
All right. Let's shift a little bit. I like to talk about peace, profit, and purpose. And you mentioned a 3-letter word that is a very powerful word, and it's joy. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about it, like what's going on in your path for joy.
Well, you and I were talking a little bit offline about this. I mean, I've really struggled with this recently, finding joy. And I've talked about this pretty openly with my team. We try to be as vulnerable as we can as leaders and as a team. In fact, in our team, we have like a Slack channel.
Okay.
That is a gratitude channel.
Yep.
Specifically, and it's not a requirement. It's kind of a standard we've created that, and really a tool for our people to kind of leverage from a mental fitness perspective internally. Mm-hmm. Because I think that gratitude is like just one of the best mindset tools you can have, right? Yep. Daily work on gratitude, just taking a couple minutes, 30 seconds, whatever it is. Like, what are you grateful for, right? And try to sit in that hot tub of gratitude. And so I find myself some days looking at that gratitude channel and like not knowing what to say, you know, or like trying to come up with something. Hey, I'm grateful for this coffee, right? Yeah. Which maybe I am, but how meaningful is this compared to like some of the things that I truly should be grateful for and this and the other. And so I find myself almost guilty or, disappointed in myself when I'm like, man, what am I grateful for?
Right.
And a lot of it is just because I'm a human being, despite what I know about this work and what I know, some of the stats we just talked about, I still also suffer from negativity and consuming too much of it. And am I putting myself around the right people? And somebody disappointed me and I'm kind of like soaking in that, right? Whatever, am I ruminating on things that I'm worried about, carrying burdens for people around me that I love, whatever it might be. And I look up and there's been weeks and weeks and I really haven't thought about, the gratitude, right? I'm surrounded by, 3 daughters that are incredible, a wife that I love, that we have a great marriage. Like there's all these great things going on, but I think happiness is like a lot about, having things to look forward to, right? And recognizing those kind of micro moments that are kind of like what life's about, right? So we were talking about like in the morning we were headed to school, the girls got Alexa on and and they're playing music, playing their and they're dancing in the middle of the kitchen. That's joy, right? And so I think it's something that I've been striving to kind of be more conscious of. And have a plan for is like moments of joy, moments of gratitude, stopping and thinking about it, reaching out to friends and colleagues and saying, hey, I'm grateful for you. Here's why, right? And just letting people know because, I think over the last handful, really decade and some, and I've experienced a lot of pain, right? Loss, friends, family, et cetera. And I think, I've been in this kind of state of grieving those things for a long time. And I think it's stolen some joy from me. Right. And so I'm trying to pour as much of it into my life as I can, and I think that telling people I'm grateful for them, typically you get it back. And that also feels good.
It feels good.
And so those are just things that I'm thinking about and striving for and also recommend for folks that are watching this.
Well, that's a challenge. My wife, Jennifer, and I, we're both serial entrepreneurs together. And, I challenge her all the time, and I honestly I don't know how to do it because I just feel like she works so hard, and we both work really hard. For her to just take a second and just enjoy what we're building around us, and I struggle with that as a husband and as a father, like, and then I fall in the trap. Like I know what I should be doing, and then I literally just spend an hour doing what I shouldn't be doing. And then I'm like, wait a second. Time out. All right, let's shift our mindset. Well, I put her in this negative space where she's worried about the metrics for the month. And I'm like, oh, you just got to think neutral. She's like, we'll bleep this out, but there's a 4-letter word that comes before you.
Yeah.
So and the other thing is giving yourself grace to be on the journey.
Yeah.
It's a long journey, and with a lot of ups and downs, and you'll get to a certain place and people will look back and be like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you're changing. Speaking of that, you're changing. What does that feel like? How do you process that when people around you, family, close friends, are like not on the same trajectory with you in terms of bettering yourself and, and shifting your mindset?
Honestly, I get a little salty about that concept, right? Somebody tells you you're changing. It's like, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, that's the plan, right? That's by design. Your problem is that you're not changing, typically. I'm quite different at 41 than I was at 35.
Yep.
Than I was at 27, than I was at 23. Thank God.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just a matter of, as you change, like, I want to change, like, by design, right? I want to have a plan, right? Yep. I also want to be able to be nimble, as I mentioned earlier, when you get punched, when you do get punched in the face and the nose, right? And there's unexpected things that happen, over the last 10, 15 years. I mean, there's so many things that have happened that unexpected. I don't even know what life was like before,
right?
13, 14 years ago, and much of which never would have expected or planned for. And so if I hadn't changed, I don't know what, like, I don't even know how it's possible,
right?
Really, right? And so I think when people kind of express that you've changed, and typically in a negative way,
right?
I think it's a lack of understanding, and people wanting to hold on to, kind of
the past.
An identity that they maybe knew you for from before, when things were good, right? Make Jimmy great again. You know what I mean? There could be jealousy. There could be, you kind of, a lot of times you grow, you outgrow somebody, an individual.
You talk about a perfect time for neutral thinking. Yeah. Because you can't, one of the most mind-numbing things you can do is try to figure out what exactly somebody else is going through. And so, if it does come across as jealousy or negatively, or maybe even, trying to pull you back to where your old identity, it's hard. That's hard to not wrap negative feelings or get salty about it. Just like, hey, I'm on my journey, they're on their journey. Hopefully we'll continue on the same path, but if not, then.
I mean, and listen, and if negative, we talk about, I know you talk about, how we surround ourselves with the right people. There's nothing more poisonous than negative people, right? I mean, we can talk about social media all day. We can talk about news and, politics all day. Like, the people in your circle, if they are negative, you will be negative. If they are negative, you will be negative. It's almost, it's science, right? I mean, it's like, if we were best friends and you were negative, I'm going to be negative.
Misery loves company.
Right? And so, and we probably talked about this before, but like, I dare you to go into your phone, find the person that you text the most, whether it's your wife or whether it's a coworker, peer, a cousin, a friend, whatever it might be. And just go out and find the last 2 weeks and just kind of tally off how many negative things that you said that, in that text thread. You're going to be shocked, probably. Right. And then on top of it, but set a plan for the next 2 weeks to say, I'm going to try to cut that number in half. And you'll also be shocked to see like how the conversation shift, how the dialogue shifts to something less negative, maybe more positive, but certainly less negative. And then do that 2 weeks over 2 weeks over 2 weeks. And you're going to find that all of a sudden those 50 negative things that you were talking about, and those, that kind of constant negativity thread becomes like more neutral, maybe becomes more positive if you've earned it. If
you earned it.
And then, but not only have you impacted yourself and how your own language, but you're going to, just by design, impact that person that you've been texting. Right. And so all of a sudden they're more positive. They're less negative. They're more neutral. And so become a force multiplier. Right.
And the things we're talking about right now are the oldest time itself. Hey, if you say, it's just it grows upon itself.
That's right.
All right. Well, that's about, we're heading toward the last, 5 minutes or so. Is there anything we didn't put on the table that you want to bring up? How do you measure success daily?
Yeah.
That's the proper. We talked about peace and purpose. We call it joy, and obviously what your life's work is right now. But how do you measure success on a day-to-day basis where you can either professionally or personally say, "Hey, I won today"?
Yeah. So I'm going to take the word that is in this kind of those three P's and call it profit. And I don't mean dollars and cents. Obviously from a business perspective, that's great.
Yeah.
When we're profitable, let's think about profit from a performance perspective, right? I want to be profitable, if you will, at the end of the day, relative to my performance. You're right, where my output, right, exceeds kind of like the input. And so in other words, like, and this is how I started. I know that I've won already when I have a great, for me personally, when I have a great workout.
Okay.
Before 7 o'clock. So I work at 6 o'clock every day.
Yep.
And most days. And I've already started my day off, right? Because it's kind of consciously attached to some other things that I'm trying to achieve, right? So obviously I'm still working towards typically having calorie deficits, right? Keeping my body tight and my mind right from there, right? And so boom, I've already won.
Yep.
And then throughout the day, right? Expressing gratitude, right? Certainly having kind of meaningful conversations with my peers and colleagues at work, and then be able to put my phone away as much as I can when I get home, right? Separating kind of that work and home life, and at the end of the day, right? Like that's profitable, right? From a performance perspective, right? Yeah. I focus on my health. I spoke on kind of the spirit side with gratitude, right? So we got body, we got
mind,
you got soul, right? And now we're, now from a business perspective, right? I'm set up to do the right things. So, I mean, I think that it really starts for me. The cool thing is I can win before 7 a.m.
Yep.
I'm not the guy that's waking up, you get on a lot of podcasts and you have CEOs and founders and entrepreneurs that are like, I wake up at 4 a.m. every day and, I'm a robot.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey man, like stop.
Right.
Like, because if that works for you, great. But like, it's for the lowest common denominator, the most of us out here, 4 a.m. is not happening, right? So
I've tried,
whatever works. So whether, for me, it's 6 a.m., which I don't think is too early, but it's early-ish. But it doesn't have to be 6 a.m. I'm not going to try to pump in it. Hey, you have to wake up at 6 a.m. If it's 6 p.m., if it's 9 p.m., I don't care what time it is, right? That you, and it doesn't have to be working out, like carving out time for yourself.
Just being purposeful.
Right. And having a plan, right? Because just that's a micro goal that I have daily, right? And once achieved, I'm already kind of on the profitable side of my performance for the day, right? And so I'm already on the other side of winning. I'm already in the green.
You're already in the green, yep.
And so for me, starting my day off like that, it gives me a head start, right? That way, if there's things that happen during the day that set me back, I'm already still ahead, right? You know what I mean? But I try to kind of make sure that I close my day out, with wins, right? And then celebrate them, and that's the other piece of the joy piece that we talked about that's been one thing I've been trying to exercise to kind of reach the joy is like, being willing to celebrate small wins, because you have these big numbers or these big kind of goals and aspirations and things that are happening. And if you don't take the time to celebrate even the smallest of wins daily, right? I'll call my co-founder DJ. I'm like, hey man, I'm looking for good news. What you got? I don't care. I mean, he might be the smallest of, hey, I got an email from so-and-so. We're going to have another call. Great. Okay. Awesome. Celebrate it. Right. And so it's celebrating small wins, because those small wins will build, and we call it the aggregate of marginal gains. Right. Just aggregating the marginal gains. That way we're profitable. Right. From a performance perspective.
Was it Atomic Habits? James Clear says stacking. Is it habit stacking or the same difference?
I mean, you can stacking days and just kind of stacking wins and kind of building blocks and.
How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
So. Exactly.
Harry, dude, I always enjoyed my time with you. I appreciate you coming out, and there's plenty of good stuff out here for people to tie into. Limitless Minds, co-founder, CEO Harry Wilson. Check it out. Check him out. I appreciate you being a friend and a neighbor and willing to do this today.
Yeah, Jimmy, I appreciate being on and looking forward to checking out, more folks that you bring on and hearing their stories. But I think this is good work.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, bud.
Nice
Bye.
time.